ever wish you could just hit, like, rewind, on those moments when anger kind of gets the best of you?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Well, today, we're going deep on Chapter 8,
Okay.
From Anger to Peace, from Scott Howard Swain's book, A Practical EmPath, Rewire Your Mind.
Hmm.
And we're going to be exploring his PEP system.
Okay.
That's practical empathy practice, by the way,
Right.
for achieving exactly that. More peace and less
Yeah.
knee-jerk anger.
You know what I find really compelling about Swain's approach is that it isn't about suppressing anger,
Right.
which we know can actually be really unhealthy.
Yeah.
P.E.P. is more about understanding the roots of your anger
Okay.
and rewiring your responses over time.
So it's less about becoming like a perfectly serene being.
Right.
And more about, gaining control of how we react.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because, let's face it, anger is a natural human emotion.
Oh, for sure.
But Swain makes this fascinating point.
Okay.
He argues that anger is rarely the true primary emotion
Right.
that we're experiencing.
Okay. That's intriguing. So what's kind of lurking beneath the surface then?
Well, Swain suggests that it's often fear, frustration, or unmet needs.
Hmm.
Think about the last time you got really angry.
Yeah.
Was there perhaps a sense of vulnerability,
Yeah.
a feeling of being unheard, or a need for respect that wasn't being met?
That's really insightful. It's like anger is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
We need to explore what's underneath to really address it.
Absolutely.
But how does PEP help us do that?
Well, it provides this practical 3-stage framework.
Yeah.
The first stage is about acknowledging that initial, almost instinctive reaction.
Yeah.
That fight, flight, or freeze response that our brains are wired for.
Right, that split-second surge of adrenaline before we even have time to think.
Exactly. But instead of getting swept away by that wave of anger, PEP encourages us to move to stage 2, engaging in self-empathy.
So we're hitting the pause button
Yes.
on that knee-jerk reaction and asking ourselves, what's really going on here for me?
Precisely. And to do that, Swain suggests we ask ourselves, what need of mine wasn't met in this situation?
Okay.
It could be a need for respect, fairness, security, autonomy, or any number of things.
So it's like we're shifting the focus from blame to understanding
Yes.
both of ourselves and the situation.
And that shift is crucial
Yeah.
because it allows us to move to stage 3,
Okay.
where we cultivate empathy for the other person.
Oh, so instead of, demonizing the person that made us angry,
Right.
we try to see things from their perspective.
Exactly. We ask ourselves, what might be going on for them?
Mhm.
And maybe they're having a terrible day.
Right.
Or maybe they're dealing with something that we're completely unaware of.
Yeah, that's so important because it reminds us that everyone is fighting their own battles.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those battles spill over into our interactions.
Absolutely.
But honestly, it sounds challenging to do all of this in the heat of the moment.
It is. But Swain emphasizes that PEP is a practice,
Okay.
not a perfection. It's about gradually rewiring our brains through repetition. The more we consciously engage in these 3 stages,
Right.
the more natural and automatic they become.
So it's like building a mental muscle.
Yeah.
The more we work it, the stronger it gets.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
And Swain even provides a visual aid for this in the book.
Okay.
It's a chart that maps out the stages of reacting to anger-provoking stimuli.
Oh, I'm a visual learner, so I'm always a fan of a good chart.
Great.
But how does this rewiring actually happen? Is it really possible to, change our default reactions?
Absolutely. Our brains are incredibly adaptable.
Okay.
And by consistently choosing empathy over our anger response,
Right.
we create new neural pathways.
So the more we practice PEP, the more our brains start to associate those positive feelings
Yes.
of understanding with situations that previously triggered anger.
Exactly. It's like replacing a negative habit with a positive one.
This is starting to make a lot of sense, but I think it'd be helpful to walk through an example. And luckily, Swain provides us with one.
He does. And it's a scenario we can all relate to. Road rage.
Ugh, yeah.
Imagine you're driving along, minding your own business, and suddenly...
Ugh, some jerk cuts me off. My blood pressure is already rising.
Okay, now take a deep breath, and let's apply PEP.
Okay.
First stage. Acknowledge the anger. You're clearly feeling it.
Yep, definitely feeling it.
Good. Now, stage 2, self-empathy.
Okay.
Ask yourself, what need of mine wasn't met just now?
Well, my need for safety on the road definitely wasn't met.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe also my need for respect and consideration from other drivers.
Excellent. You're already starting to shift your focus from blame to understanding. Now, stage 3, empathy for the other driver.
Okay.
What might be going on for them that you don't know about?
That's a good point. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital or they just got some bad news. Or maybe they're just a jerk. But even jerks have their reasons, right?
Right. The point is, by engaging in this three-stage process,
Okay.
you're interrupting that automatic anger response and replacing it with curiosity and even compassion.
I can actually feel the tension easing as I go through these steps.
That's the power of PEP.
Yeah.
It allows us to regain control of our emotions and choose a more peaceful response.
This is really fascinating. I'm already seeing how this could be a game changer in so many situations.
It absolutely can be.
Yeah.
And Swain provides even more practical tools in the chapter, including some real-life conversations that demonstrate how PEP can be applied in everyday scenarios.
I'm all ears. Let's dive into those conversations and see how PEP plays out in practice.
These conversations are brilliant because they show us how PEP can be applied to those little annoyances we all face. Like, remember Bob from accounting? The one with the mouth farts?
Oh, yeah, how could I forget Bob? The office air freshener budget went up like 20%, thanks to him.
Well, Swain uses this scenario to show how Julie, Bob's coworker, can use PEP instead of just fuming silently. It starts with her friend Max, kind of guiding her to identify her unmet need.
So instead of just focusing on, how annoying Bob is,
right,
Julie starts to think about what's missing for her in that situation.
Exactly. Max asks, is it more like consideration that you're not getting? And suddenly Julie has this aha moment. It's not just about the smell. It's about feeling respected and considered in her workspace.
That's a huge shift. So by pinpointing her unmet need, Julie can now communicate it to Bob.
Right.
In a way that's more likely to lead to a positive outcome.
Right. PEP isn't about letting people off the hook for bad behavior. It's about approaching the situation with understanding and a focus on finding solutions.
I'm starting to see how this could be so powerful.
Yeah.
Even in situations where it seems impossible to find common ground. But what about those times when the anger feels completely justified? Like when someone betrays your trust or acts unethically.
That's where the real challenge of PEP comes in. Swain doesn't shy away from the fact that practicing empathy in these situations is incredibly difficult. But he argues that it's precisely in these moments that it's most crucial.
Because if we can tap into empathy, even when it feels hardest,
right,
that's when we truly break free from that cycle of anger and resentment.
Absolutely. It doesn't mean condoning the behavior, but it does mean trying to understand the underlying motivations, the pain, the unmet needs that might have driven the person to act that way.
Okay, that's a really challenging concept.
Yeah.
But I can see the value in it. It's that we're choosing to rise above that initial anger response and engage on a more human level.
Exactly. And Swain provides us with some practical exercises at the end of the chapter to help us develop this empathy muscle.
Oh, I love a good exercise. Tell me more about those.
One of the exercises focuses on rewriting our past reactions. We think about a situation where we reacted with anger and then brainstorm alternative responses we could have had using the PEP framework.
So it's like a mental rehearsal for handling similar situations in the future with more grace and understanding.
Precisely. And another exercise encourages us to apply PEP to someone who angered us in the past. We try to understand their perspective and identify their unmet needs, even if we still disagree with their actions.
I can see how this would be a powerful way to release some of that lingering anger and resentment. It's like we're choosing to forgive, not necessarily for their sake, but for our own peace of mind.
That's a great insight. Forgiveness, even without an apology, can be incredibly liberating, and PEP can help pave the way for that.
This is all so incredibly insightful. Feels like we've only scratched the surface of what PEP has to offer.
We have. But what I find most exciting is that Swain ends the chapter with this incredibly thought-provoking question. Imagine a world where automatic empathy is the norm.
Whoa, that's a big one. What would that world even look like?
Imagine a world where instead of reacting with anger or defensiveness, our first instinct is to seek understanding, to connect with the human experience behind the behavior.
It's almost utopian, isn't it? But it's also incredibly inspiring.
It is. It suggests that a more peaceful and compassionate world is possible, not through some grand societal shift, but through the individual choices we make every single day.
So by practicing PEP, we're not just creating more peace in our own lives. We're also contributing to a ripple effect of empathy that could potentially transform the world around us.
That's the beauty of it. We have the power to be agents of change, one empathetic interaction at a time. And who knows, maybe Someday, automatic empathy will no longer be a radical concept, but a natural way of being.
That's a future I'm definitely on board with. You know that vision of a world driven by automatic empathy that's really compelling? It's like a challenge to step up and be part of something bigger than ourselves.
And what's amazing is Swain doesn't present PEP as this unattainable ideal.
Right.
He gives us concrete tools and techniques that anyone can use to start cultivating more empathy in their lives.
So it's not about, becoming a saint overnight. It's about making that conscious effort to shift our perspective and to understand, both ourselves and others more deeply.
Exactly. It's about replacing judgment with curiosity, reactivity with understanding.
Yeah.
And the more we practice, the more natural it becomes.
This whole conversation has been like a real eye-opener for me.
Yeah.
I feel like I have this new framework now for approaching those situations that, used to trigger my anger.
That's the power of knowledge and self-awareness.
Yeah.
And as we've seen, PEP offers this really practical and effective path to cultivating both.
So to our listeners, if you're ready to transform your relationship with anger and embrace a more peaceful way of being, we highly recommend checking out Scott Howard Swain's book, A Practical EmPath, Rewire Your Mind.
Yes.
It's packed with insights and exercises that can help you, embark on this journey.
And remember, even small shifts in perspective can make a big difference.
Yeah.
Each time you choose empathy over anger, you're not only creating more peace in your own life, but also contributing to a more compassionate and understanding world.
So the next time you feel that anger rising, take a deep breath, remember the PEP framework, and choose empathy.
Yes.
You might be surprised by the transformative power of that choice.